Hi and welcome to this month's update from Dean Park. Hope you enjoyed my retro BBC Rail Watch intro there from way back in 1989. I'm sure some of you will be old enough to remember this 5-part programme from back in the days of BR when the rolling stock was British built and the men wore brown suits. It's been a really busy month here at the layout with lots of projects to show you. First off, I'll show you how to enhance and improve the detail on Hornby's Rud Wagon. I achieved this by using a number of techniques to remove the old weathering and replace it with something more in keeping with the real wagon. This might inspire you to have a go at weathering yourself. I also bring you yet another new Loco, this time in the form of the Hornby Class 91 in stunning Battle of Britain Memorial Flight livery. And I take you with me on my world tour around Highlands, Scotland with some stunning views as seen from the comfort of a ScotRail train. I also reveal a rather special repaint, not of a Loco, but of a Ford Transit van. I go from O to double O with this limited edition wagon. And finally, I have a smattering of running shots from around the layout, some featuring visiting locomotives from Everard Junction, who popped in to say hello while holidaying in Scotland. Hopefully there's something in there for you. As always, I welcome all feedback, so get typing your thoughts in the comment section below. I'd also be really grateful if you can give this video a like and hit that subscribe button to support the channel. So without further ado, grab a drink, sit back and relax as I bring you bang up to date with what's been going on at Dean Park. In this sequence I'm going to look at the Hornby Rud Wagon and I'm going to do some work on the weathering. Now I bought these from Grimy Times down at Worley in 2018 I think it was, when I visited with a good friend of mine, Mike, and he'd supplied them in a kind of generic weathered finish that he'd done. These wagons were in fairly new around the late 1980s and in a pretty decent condition externally at least. So what I'm going to do in this sequence, I'm going to take the weathering back using some IPA and enamel thinners with a cotton bud, and then build up more of a realistic in-use weathered finish to the external, the underframe and the internal parts of the wagon. Now the Hornby Rud is a pretty decent wagon. It's got NEM socket there with a kinematic coupler. There's been an attempt to underframe, obviously not as detailed as some of the newer wagons that we're seeing on the market now from rival companies, but from rail level it does the job. It's not got sprung buffers, which don't bother me in a wagon if I'm being totally honest. I never use them. And it's nice crisp moulding on the sides, and it does the job. It's a pretty decent wagon and it's pretty decent value for money as well. What stopped me using this wagon a little bit more is the generic finish on the inside. So I'm going to employ some methods that I've picked up from Paul at TRSWLTD, who did some work on my Accurascale Tippler wagons. The link to that video where I showcase his work is at the top of the screen now. And if you want to contact Paul from TRSWLTD, I've put the contact details in the description below. Okay, after much scrubbing with some IPA, the IPA tended to soften the top finish. He'd applied 2 finishes to it. He'd given it a kind of faded look with a white, and then added some rusting and frame dirt. So it had to be taken back, and it took quite a bit of scrubbing, as you probably saw in the sequence there. I'm pretty happy with that now. It's a bit shiny in places. You can probably see the light hitting the sides where I've scrubbed. And I'm going to blend all that in with some weathering and a finishing top coat as well. The Rud wagon was used for carrying tools and spoil to and from the engineering site. And while some of you might enjoy running your wagons empty to see the interior detail, I've come across this 3-pack of loads that you can use for the Rud and the Clam wagons from Hornby, and I got these on eBay, and they come in a pack of 3 and they're made up of foam with spoil and scatter and ballast sprinkled and fixed onto the top. I'll put the eBay seller details in the description below. Hornby's latest Class 91 has arrived at Dean Park, and I have to say I'm really impressed on several levels. First off, just look at it. Hornby have done an excellent job at recreating the stunning Battle of Britain Memorial Flight livery, which adorns the actual Loco 91110, and it's still in service on the East Coast today. The actual Loco received this colour scheme back in 2012, and it was unveiled to the public in June of that year at Railfest. The Loco still wears an updated version of this livery, having done away with the purple East Coast stripe and replaced it with a greyish one. It looks stunning, and having seen it at Edinburgh Waverley a few years ago, it's one of the most impressive liveries I've ever seen. 91110 still holds the national speed record for electric locomotives at 162 miles an hour, which it attained at Stoke Bank near Peterborough on the 17th of September 1989. The double O gauge recreation of the Class 91 is impressive. Hornby have done this livery justice, and it's sure to be popular with modellers and collectors alike. Hornby have also made some updates to the chassis and bogies so that they ride better on track work. Gone is the wobbly and clunky nature that plagued so many of the initial releases of this tooling. It's good that they've done this, but also frustrating that they didn't test it thoroughly enough before releasing the initial models last year. Also, in what I think is a first for a Hornby highly detailed model, is the fitting of cab crew. This is a welcome step and shows that Hornby are listening to consumers and upping their game with the details they add to their models. He even has his red LNER staff tie on. It's just unfortunate that they've put the driver on the wrong side of the cab. I found this funny, but if it irritates you, you can snap him out of his seat and move him across. I intend to get a 3D printed driver from the likes of Model U and fit him in the driver's seat, leaving this chap as a second man. I hope Model U have a figure available to fit. So there you have it, a quick look at Hornby's latest Class 91. While not requiring a full in-depth review, I've rated it as follows. Livery and application, I've given it 5 out of 5, I really can't fault it. Performance is now 4, whereas in my initial review of the Class 91, I rated this at 3. Electronics is 4, and the packaging has increased slightly to 4.5, partly due to the model now being wrapped in more soft touch plastic than before, so none of the model rubs against the ice cube packaging. This was an issue on the previous model, which caused some scuffing of the body paintwork. Hornby have added more details with the inclusion of a driver, however this alone doesn't increase it higher than the 4 that I gave it in my full review last year. The plastic panto is easy to poise and feels robust. Okay, it doesn't operate, but that really isn't an issue for me. Value for money is now 4 thanks to the stunning livery and improved running characteristics of this model. Overall, this now gives the model 4 out of 5, with a recommendation that you should go ahead and buy this particular Class 91. It looks great, runs well, and is an overall improved package from the first releases. Have you got this new Class 91? What are your thoughts? I'd be keen to hear from you. Now let's see this stunning Loco run with its For the Fallen classmate around Dean Park. In the Easter break, I ticked off some rail journeys that I hadn't experienced for a while, or in some cases hadn't done at all. I planned my trip up the east coast to Aberdeen, and then along to Inverness before heading back down the Highland Main Line to Perth. In the next series of clips, I'll briefly showcase the sights of Highland Scotland. For some of you, it may bring back some memories, but for others, I hope it will entice you to try these journeys for yourself and sample the Scottish landscape for the first time. I start this journey at Dundee, where I boarded a ScotRail Intercity 7 HST to Aberdeen. The trip to Aberdeen took me along the edges of the east coast with some great views of the North Sea and surrounding scenery, passing Montrose and the golfing town of Carnoustie. At stages of this trip we were fairly motoring along, and it felt good to experience proper high-speed travel in a comfortable coach. The lineside gorse was in full bloom with vibrant yellow flashing past the window. Drawing into Aberdeen, you pass Clay Hill Servicing Depot, which once would have been a hive of diesel loco activity. The trip on board a classic Mark III coach was comfortable and was streets ahead of the state-of-the-art Azuma I'd experienced a few days earlier. So much for progress. Aberdeen Station is impressive with an airy feel thanks to its glass canopy. I didn't have time to wander around as it was a short turnaround to make my connection to Inverness, which predictably was served by a 158. These units have been plying their trade in Scotland for over 30 years and still provide a good commuter service. The trip to Inverness was mostly single track, with sections still controlled by semaphore signals. The train served towns such as Inverurie and Huntly, home of my favourite shortbread brand, before heading to Keith, which is an 18km heritage railway, well worth a visit. The train made other stops at Elgin and Nairn before drawing into Inverness. Inverness is the Highland capital of Scotland and is a pleasant day out. Sadly, their castle that overlooks the town was closed for renovation, but there was more than enough to see and have a wander around before heading back for my 250 trip to Perth, which was booked first class on an HST. Upon arrival at Inverness station, I found out that the booked HST had developed an issue and that this 4-car train was to be packed into a 2-car Class 158, which had no first class. This was a big disappointment, as my first trip through the Highlands over the highest summits and past some glorious towns such as Aviemore, Kingussie, over the Drumochter summit to Blairathol, Pitlochry and Dunkeld was slightly marred by the cramped, hot and very noisy train journey on the Class 158. ScotRail online customer services were less than understanding afterwards, but as some would say, that's ScotRail for you. The scenery was stunning and was made all the better by the glorious weather. A great day out on the rails was had, and as I said earlier, if you haven't seen the northern parts of Scotland, you really have to experience it for yourself. A couple of months ago, I embarked on a little project that came off the back of a conversation I had with Steve at Scoonie Hobbies. Steve told me that back in the 90s his dad Andy had the shop Ford Transit painted to replicate the Intercity SWL livery as it was painted on the Class 91 locos when they were newly introduced. This got me thinking, so I set about buying up a couple of Oxford die-cast Ford Transits of the era. Unfortunately, Oxford don't do the exact version of the Scoonie Transit van, so I had to compromise slightly and go for the longer wheelbase version, which was still around at the same time. The white van gave me a good base on which to paint the livery, with the yellow being applied first. Next was the application of the Falcon Grey areas, and this took a lot of masking and careful remasking to get the shape that I wanted. I didn't use primer for this, as I wanted to keep as much of the base white as I could, and I was slightly concerned that this would leave the Falcon Grey a little bit more fragile than if I'd primed the area, but the Falcon Grey enamel adhered well to the model. I had to use a bit of artistic license at the back of the van, as we didn't have any photos as a reference. I decided just to continue the Falcon Grey mask around the back, over the windows, which the real Scoonie van didn't have. I then applied the Intercity Executive Grey, but found that this beige colour chipped when masking over it to paint on the red stripe, so I decided to individually prime each part, where the beige, red and black would be. This was frustrating and took even more time and more masking. Paint can be a funny thing sometimes. Some colours adhere better to a smooth surface than others. The Intercity beige went on well, followed by the rail red and rail black to represent the underframe and lower body side grills on the Class 91. I then coated both models that I was doing in clear gloss varnish, again using rail match enamels through an airbrush. I gave this a couple of days to cure before carefully applying the custom made decals. These closely replicate the Intercity Swallow font, which didn't seem to exist as a standalone font that I could just readily put my hands on. Another coat of varnish sealed these decals in place before coating one van in satin varnish while leaving the other one with a glossy finish. I really enjoyed the process, but it took hours upon hours to do, and at times it almost drove me mad. Maybe I'll give other vehicles on the layout a unique rail related livery. I have a few ideas floating around, so watch this space. Last autumn I showcased my purchase of a limited edition Wemyss coal wagon in O gauge. While stunning, its use is rather limited as I don't currently have an O gauge layout to run it on. So it's now been shrunk into a better size. This is the latest wagon from Scoonie Hobbies in Kirkcaldy, and it's limited to just 130 wagons, and it's proven very popular, with just over half of the stock already spoken for within the first 2 days of release. If you like collecting wagons, then you may want one of these Dapple ones for only £16.50 each. More history on the Wemyss can be found in my October update where I showcase the O gauge wagon. The link to that is at the top of the screen. At the time of filming, these double O gauge wagons are currently in stock at Scoonie Hobbies and are limited to 4 per customer. Contact Stephen on 01592 651 792 if you want to grab this collectible wagon. And just to clarify, I'm not on any commission from Stephen for highlighting these wagons. Well, that's all I've got for you in this episode. I hope you've enjoyed seeing some of the work I've been up to over the last month. I'd be really keen to hear your thoughts on anything you've seen in this video. For example, have you visited the Highlands of Scotland? What did you think? Or has my wagon weathering feature given you the confidence to have a go yourself? Let me know all feedback in the comments section below. In the meantime, thanks for watching, stay safe, and cheers for now.